Hello guys, and welcome to our July video tutorial. I am pretty much running out of ideas on how to begin these videos, but here I am saying the same old sentence. So for this month, I decided to design a full body character because some of you expressed that you find it difficult to pose your character, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about it a bit more. So for this character, I am using a reference photo that you will see on the screen now, I think. And I am only using the photo as reference for the pose, and I'm changing everything else because I don't want to design a character based on that person. I want to use my imagination and come up with my own ideas. So the first step is the very rough sketch that you are seeing on the screen right now. And I am using a pretty big brush for this sketch. I'm always using the mechanical pencil from Max Lichny's comic brush pack. You will see that information in pretty much all of my step-by-step tutorials. So I am using a big brush because that prevents me from going into unnecessary details. And as you can see, I'm keeping it super rough. I am blocking in the pose, like the main position of the legs and the arms, and I don't allow myself to think about the outfit and stuff like that. I mean, I have a general idea that I want her to be wearing these flared pants. I think they are flared, I'm not sure about the term. And I know I want her to have these big chunky shoes and a short cardigan, which I saw from the reference picture, but the rest is up to me. So after I am done with the rough sketch, I move on to cleaning it up a little bit, but not too much. This is not going to be my final sketch. I am using the same brush but slightly thinner because this allows me to add a bit more details, but not too much, if that makes sense. So I am cleaning it up and trying to push the shapes a little bit. I will try to exaggerate some of the forms, like for example the pants, because they are flared. The main characteristic of flared pants, God, I hope that's the term, but the main characteristic is that they are very tight at the knees and they go wider down, and also obviously a person's thighs are a little bit wider than their knees, hopefully. So this creates sort of like an hourglass shape for each leg, and I'm trying to push that and make the knees even tinier, and then the pants going wider as they go down. I hope I'm explaining it well. But you want to create contrast in your shapes. You want to create contrast between big and small. So in this case, I have the tiny knees and a tiny waist in this case, but also big thighs. I mean, they are not big, but compared to the knees, they are. And also the ending of the pants is also big and quite wide. So this creates nice visual contrast, which is interesting, and the viewer will want to inspect that and take a longer look. So this is what we're aiming for. And then I continue to clean up the rest of the body. And as you can see, I am drawing her naked, which might seem a little bit weird, but it is actually very helpful because I have this big bulky sweater that she's going to be wearing, and I want to make sure that the anatomy underneath is correct. Well, not so much the anatomy as the structure. I want the structure to be correct, and I don't want her arms to be too long or too short, you know. I want them to be the correct length. I am sorry for saying the word correct so many times. Anyways, so it is very beneficial to draw the naked body and then add the clothing on top and erase the parts that you don't need, because this creates a lot of consistency in your design, and the viewer will always appreciate that, even if they don't know it. Because if something is off, they will know it, because we are people and we are used to seeing other people, and when we see something that is off about their anatomy, we instantly notice that, even if we can't tell what it is exactly. I am actually drawing the same character that I posted a sketch of recently, this week. I really liked her, and I think she had a lot of personality in her, which is something very valuable in a character design. As you know, It's a topic that I probably discuss in like every single post that I ever make, but I try to steer away from the blank-faced pretty girl, and I try to add more personality to my designs because I personally think it looks better. Not that there's something wrong with not doing it, but yeah. So I really liked her, and I thought it would be fun to draw her again in a, full body thing. So we can see her full body. Oh my god, I'm sorry. So I am continuing to clean up the sketch, and as you can see, I am still trying to push the proportions and make the waist even tinier, because in this case she is a thin girl and I want to exaggerate her proportions, and I want to have variety in my shapes. I want to have, for example, her wide shoulders and then the tiny waist and then the wider hips, because any variety in shapes creates visual interest, and any variety in proportions as well, as we discussed in this month's step-by-step tutorial if you have read it. So yeah, always try to have variety. I'm also thinning out her arms a little bit and her wrists, because I want the design to be a bit more cartoony and pushed, and a cartoony design means more contrast between the shapes. So you will have some shapes that are very big and some that are very small, and you want to exaggerate all of them because this is what makes it cartoony. In real life, everything is sort of medium. When you look at your arm, your wrist is not that smaller than the rest of your arm probably. So this is just real life, everything is sort of balanced, and I don't know another word to describe what I mean, but it's balanced. So in character design, you want to steer away from that and create more contrast. I'm also keeping in mind the perspective of my character. You may have noticed in the reference picture that I showed you earlier that the camera is positioned slightly like above the character, or like at eye level, because the person that took the photo is as tall as the model. So it's very distorted in a way, and you can clearly see that with her feet because they are not at the same level. One of them is coming closer to the camera than the other one. So I want to make sure that I have that in my drawing too, so it doesn't look flat. And the next step is another sketch pass. I am lowering the opacity of my previous sketch, and I actually made it orange so that it's easier for me to distinguish between the under sketch and the one that I'm creating now. And the purpose of this sketch is to clean up the shapes a little bit more and add the clothing on top. In this case, the cardigan and whatever top she's going to wear underneath that. Sometimes I find it better to divide my process into smaller steps. It might be a little bit annoying to repeat the same thing over and over again. Like for example, these pants here, they are not that different from the pants in my previous sketch, so I'm just drawing on top of them, but other aspects of the drawing will be different, so I think it is worth to make those tinier steps if you feel it makes sense for your drawing. I'm also keeping the shoes in this design quite simple because I always spend like an hour drawing the shoes in my designs and then I have to crop them out because Instagram is stupid and it has a weird aspect ratio. So I decided that I will keep them a little bit simpler in this design. I also tried to have this mindset, like I was imagining that someone asked me to design this character for an animation movie. So if you do that, you have to keep it very simple because then someone has to animate that design and make turnarounds and all that stuff. So you don't want to add any unnecessary details and you want to keep the shapes very clean and very simple. So this is what I was going for in this design. Now I'm drawing the cardigan on top, and it's a bit of a trial and error to see how the folds will work. It's very important how you design your folds because this is going to tell you a lot about the fabric that the cardigan is made of, or whatever piece of clothing you have. So in this case, I want to have big folds because this indicates that the fabric is very thick. And you will also notice that on one side of the character where her arm is bent at the elbow, I have a lot of detail going on there. I have all these folds and all the fabrics crunched up on top of her arm. While on the other side where the arm is straight, it's very simple and there isn't a lot of detail going on there because this is again another way for me to create contrast. So I have more detail on one side of the character and less detail on the opposite side, which, I mean, they are opposing one another, and so the viewer is not confused. They know that they will look at the side with the more detail. Whereas if both sides had enough, equal amounts of detail, the viewer will be confused and they will be like, oh, where do I look? You know? So you should always think about that too. I'm keeping the expression very simple, a little bit similar to my sketch that I posted this week. I think it goes well with the character's personality, and it's not really the focus of my drawing here, so I thought it would look okay. I'm keeping the mouth shape very simple because, as I said, I want this character to be designed like for an animation movie, and I don't want to have all this detail like the arch of the mouth and all of those planes of the mouth. I don't really need that. It doesn't have any purpose here, so I am omitting that from my drawing. And now it's finally time to work on the colors of our drawing and create the color scheme. Before I did that, I actually played around with the drawing a little bit and I experimented with different rendering styles because I love using black outlines and solid colors underneath, but I feel like I want to experiment more and try different things and see what else I like, you know? So I spent an amount of time experimenting and trying out stuff, but I didn't like the things that I created, so I am going for something else. I decided to mix the graphic design things that I've been doing lately for my Patreon tutorials. I really like their style, so I wanted to mix that with my character design work. I thought it might be interesting to see what will happen. So before I go on to the rendering, I am working on the color scheme and I decided to go for these warm neutral tones and contrast them with a bit of blue. But as you can see, it's not really very saturated blue, it's quite grayish. And I also created a black layer on top of everything and set it to color blending mode because this turns my image black and white and I can see the values. And the purpose of that is to see if everything looks sort of the same gray. And this is something that you want to avoid. You want to have contrast, as we already said. So you want to have, for example, dark pants or dark top and light skin, or the other way around. But you don't want everything to be the same level of gray because then it will just blend in and it will not look very interesting. I also want to have this pattern on the pants, but I have to think of how to draw it so that it's not too distracting, because as you can see, it creates a lot of contrast. It's very busy, it's very detailed, and I don't really want the viewer to look at her pants first. I want them to look at her face, so I will have to think of a way to kind of simplify that a little bit and make it feel less busy while at the same time preserving its detail, because I think it looks cool. I am giving her dark hair, first of all because she had dark hair in the sketch, and second of all because this will help separate her face from the background. As you saw before I added the hair, the color of her skin and the color of her background, were quite similar, so it's helpful to add a darker value around the head so that it separates the two volumes and shapes. I'm also adding a pattern to her purse, but I'm trying to make it not so contrasty because it will draw a lot of attention to itself, so I'm trying to keep it a little bit simpler. And I can't really decide if I like the pink or the yellow background more. Feel free to let me know which one you prefer. I decided to go with the yellow one. I have been kind of obsessed with yellow lately, as you may have seen by all of my Patreon posts in the last month. Yeah, I just think it looks cool. And it looks nice with the skin tone, so... I also changed the color of her sweater. I don't know why, but when I design characters, I always try to give them as much hues as possible. Many. The word is many. And in real life, when I'm picking my outfits, I don't really do that. So it kind of feels weird to give her all of these colorful clothes. I don't feel like it matches her personality very well anyway. And as I said, I want to experiment with the rendering for this piece a little bit, so what I do is I create a new layer on top of everything, and I just try to roughly render it to see the direction that it's going in, so that I know what I'm going to do when I actually start rendering later on. I have this tendency to divide my process into very structured steps, you know, rough sketch, clean sketch, color underneath, adding shadows, and everything is divided and structured so well, which has its benefits for sure, but it also sometimes prevents me from being creative and experimenting with new things. So that's why I decided to take a different approach this time and just see what the rendering will be if I do it very quickly and very roughly, and then I will try to imitate that when I'm cleaning up my drawing. So the effect that I'm going for here is I want to have line work, but I don't want to have it everywhere because I want to incorporate more of that flat look in my drawings lately. I made one experiment last month, I think, and it wasn't very successful. I like the colors, not the rendering, so there was something nice about it, so I want to take that and incorporate it into this piece while also mixing it with the qualities of my line work and my other pieces, and also the graphic design stuff that I do for Patreon. I think a mix of all those things might be nice, so let's see. I'm not adding line work everywhere on the pants because the color of the line work is quite dark. It's not black, but it's very dark brown, and the pants are quite light in color. So this creates a very strong contrast, which I have to be careful with. I told you that we want contrast, but we don't really want it everywhere. We just want it at the places that we want the viewer to look at, and in this case that's not her pants. So I'm only keeping some places with line work and others without. I think it will look nice in the end. And the cleanup stage for this piece is a bit weird for me, but I think it works well overall. I am creating a new layer for the skin tone, and pretty much all of the skin that is visible on this character will be on the same layer. I am using Procreate's default 6B pencil to color in my character, and as you can see, I am not outlining a shape and then dragging the color inside to fill it in automatically. Instead, I am using a fairly small brush and just filling it in myself as if it was on paper, because I think this creates a really nice texture that I really like. This is the first time I think that I'm using the 6B pencil for both my line work and my color work, like filling in the colors, but I use it for all of my Patreon stuff and I really like the texture, so I thought it was about time that I gave it a chance. I'm creating a new layer on top of the skin tone and I'm drawing some line work. It has a very different quality in a way from my different line work, mostly because the brush is different and also because I am not drawing, big lines with one movement, but instead I'm just erasing and adding where I think it needs to be thicker. And for the skin tone, I am using this dark brown color again. I will not use that color for all of my line work. I think I will use the color of some objects but darker for their line work. But for the skin, I think dark brown works very well. I think the rendering of the face here is going to tell me what the rest of the piece is going to look like exactly, because I sort of know what it will look like from the little sketch that I made on the side, but there is still a lot I don't know because obviously that was a very quick experiment. So working on the face is going to give me a lot of information about the overall style of this image. So I decided to not use my usual process where I do the line work and then I do the colors and then I do the details inside. I decided to take a different approach this time and just do one thing at a time. I will do probably the entire head and face and then I will move on to something else, do that and then move on to something else. This is just because this style is new to me and I want to experiment and just see what works, what doesn't. Sometimes I like to give my characters eyeshadow for the only reason that it allows me to show the shape of their eyelids and it really adds a lot of volume to the drawing, so I decided to cheat a little bit here too and give her this very light creamish eyeshadow. Especially when the character is looking down. I personally struggle with drawing eyes that are looking down. I always have. I need to practice that specific thing more, but drawing the eyelids really helps add more volume. After I'm sort of done with the face, I move on to drawing her top. I'm not 100% satisfied with the face, but I decided to leave it for a second and then I will come back to it later on. So for the top, I am creating this dark gray shape, and on a new layer on top, I am adding some detail to it. And I wanted to have some rushing on the top, but to do that, I tried to space the lines not very evenly. As you can see, I have some that are closer together and others that are further apart. I think this creates, again, interest, so it's one of the basic design rules that I go by. I think it's very helpful and it can easily make your design look much better. I create a new layer on top of everything and I draw the cardigan, and I very carefully outline where it's touching the face because the layer is on top of the face and I don't want to cover it with the cardigan because it wouldn't make any sense. To outline her hand, I'm using a bit of a thinner line because I don't want to create too much contrast there. And also, I want to draw some folds on the cardigan, but I don't want to use this dark brown color that I'm using on the skin tone because the cardigan is almost white and it's going to be a little bit harsh and create too strong of a contrast, which we don't want. So instead, I'm using this very desaturated pink color. I'm only darkening it in some areas where there is shadow. For example, where the sleeve is all scrunched up. And using a slightly thinner line, I am drawing some detail on the cardigan, like the hem and things like that. And on the base shape, on the base shape of the cardigan, using its color, I am drawing this lines going outside of it because this imitates it shows the material of the cardigan, you know, it shows that it's kind of fluffy, and I think this is a really nice way to add texture to your design and drawing. I really like the idea of tortoiseshell buttons on her cardigan, but I am not sure if it will work very well because this is too small of a detail for such a simplified drawing, so I leave it for now and I will come back to it later and decide if I like it or if I will just make them all brown. I am using the same color that I used for the outline of the skin to outline the pants too, but as I said, I am not adding line work everywhere on the pants, only on some places that I feel that will really benefit from some line. I also make the line thicker on the edges because, for example, on her hips, the widest point and the pointiest point is the bone, which is hard compared to the muscle, and wherever you have hard shapes you want to emphasize the line and make it thicker, and especially on angles it works very well. And I'm doing the same at the end of the pants too, At the angle, I make the line slightly thicker. I'm also drawing some folds on the pants, but not too many because, again, I don't want any unnecessary detail, but I still need some, folds to show what the material is and kind of how they fit on her body. Now I'm creating a new layer on top of the pants, clipping it to that layer of the pants, and using a slightly lighter color, I am drawing some lines for the pattern. And also on a new layer, again clipped to the pants, I'm using a slightly reddish orangish color. I set its blending mode to overlay and I draw more lines and lower the opacity because this creates more, it adds some pop of color to the beige pants and it diversifies the pattern. To outline the shoes, I am using this very bright orange color. They will be white, like creamish in color, but sometimes when I'm drawing things like that, I like to use a very bright color because I can clearly see what the shape of the object is and I will not make any mistakes, if that makes sense. And then I just fill it in with the color that I actually want. I'm keeping the values of the shoes very simple. They are cream in color, but their details are very close to that base color because I don't want to create very strong contrast there. And I'm also outlining a part of the shoes, but not everything. And I will later on darken some parts. I think the contrast rule is the main thing that you can take away from this video. You want to have variety and contrast, and you don't want to have shapes and things that are too similar in size and color. When you create variety, this instantly creates visual interest and the viewer will want to take a closer look at your design. Using the same dark brown color, I am outlining the ankles, but again I am using a fairly thin line because, you guessed it, I don't want too much contrast there. I am using a couple of layers to block in the hair. One of the layers is underneath everything and underneath the skin tone because I don't want to have to outline the entire head and the ear and everything. So I just moved that hair to the bottom of everything and then I create a new layer on top of the head, and then I will add my details there. I want to make the silhouette of the hair a little bit more interesting, so instead of having one big solid shape, I try to cut little holes in it. So on her left side, I create a little hole in the hair because I think that makes the whole shape look a little bit more interesting. And then I will add more hairs, like separated hair strands around it later on. To outline the scarf on her head, I am using a dark blue color because the brown will not really look very good on that blue scarf. So instead I pick the local color of the object and I go darker and more saturated. I made the mistake of drawing the hair without any reference here, so it's a bit of a trial and error and it will take me some time to get it done, but in general, I just want to create a few strands of hair that are twisting around one another because it will make it look more interesting. I don't want to just pop the entire hair behind her body because, I mean, it looks okay and this is what I usually do, but I want to challenge myself a little bit for this piece and make the hair interact with the body because I think that often looks very interesting. And something that I always keep in mind when I design my characters, or literally anything, is simplicity. So I will try to keep my lines as simple as possible. If I have a very slight curvature or detail somewhere on my line, I will most probably straighten that up or emphasize it. I don't want it to look as a mistake. If the viewer is looking at your drawing and you have to explain what they're looking at, then you probably did something wrong. So you have to be very clear with your lines and very clearly communicate your ideas. I am sorry for the sudden change in lighting. It got really dark when I was drawing this and I had to stop and continue today, so it is magically the next day now. As you noticed, I got rid of the line on the cardigan on the side where the character's arm is straight because it was just too much detail and it wasn't really contributing very much to the drawing. It didn't really matter if that line was there or not, so I decided to get rid of it. This is something that I often ask myself when designing characters. If there is a detail that when I remove it, the character in the drawing still looks the same, then I probably just don't need that detail. And if I remove it and something is missing from the drawing, I know that that detail is important and I bring it back. This is actually something that I read somewhere or I heard it in a character design class. I don't remember anymore, but it goes something like, your design is not finished when there is nothing else to be added to it. It is finished when there is nothing else to be removed from it. So you want your design to be the most important things about it. And you don't want anything unnecessary in it because it will just distract the viewer from the main idea. By the way, let me know if you prefer this version of the tutorial where the video is sped up quite a lot and I'm talking on top, or if you prefer the version that I did in April where the video is real time but is really trimmed out. I decided to do it like this month because in the other version I really have to trim out a lot of the information and skip certain parts in order to make it fit in like 40-ish minutes. So I decided to keep everything this time but speed it up. But I don't know, let me know if you prefer the sped up version or the other one. In this last step, I'm adding a little bit more detail to the hair because I think the face was looking a little bit too plain and it wasn't really drawing too much attention, which we actually want in this case because the face is the most important thing here. So I am drawing some wispy hairs around the main hair shape and also a few more hairs covering her forehead. Now I'm alpha-locking the line work layer of the skin tone, and using an almost black color I am drawing on top of the shadow under her head and also around her face because the value of her line work before was very close to the value of her hair and they were sort of blending in, which I don't really want, so I decided to darken the outline of the face a little bit. I'm also adding a very subtle shadow between her nose and her eyebrows because this indicates the shape of the skull there and it adds a little bit of volume to the drawing, which I think it can really benefit because otherwise it's quite flat. And finally, I changed the color of her eyelids because, I don't know, the white looks good, but I just wanted to have that contrast between the blue and the orange on her face because they are opposite colors on the color wheel and they just look very nice together. And especially because the blue is quite desaturated there, while the orange is very saturated. So this is the reason why they don't clash, but they look very nice together. And also one last thing is that when I'm using the 6B pencil, which I used for the entire drawing so far, I play around with its opacity a lot because if you lower it, you get the texture of the brush, but it's not very opaque, which is really nice when you want to add some very subtle shadows like that on her face or just some texture here and there. Because I want to maintain some structure in the style, the hair, for example, is consisting of 3 things: the base local color, the color of the shadow, and the third color, which is the outline, which is the darkest one. I think having a combination of those 3 colors and values creates enough detail but not making it too detailed for this style. And with that, my design is pretty much done now. I really hope you liked it. I know it's a very different style, but I really wanted to experiment, and I thought it might be helpful to show you my process when experimenting, because it's very easy to draw in our comfort zone, and it's very easy for me to show you how to draw my usual characters, but I decided it would be fun to show you what it is to step out of your comfort zone and what the process is and how you think about it. So I really hope that was helpful, and I hope you like the style of this drawing. I think it looks nice. It's probably like not my new style for sure, but that's kind of okay because I wouldn't know if I like it unless I try. So I'm happy that I tried something new. I definitely have some elements in this style that I really like and others that I don't really enjoy so much, so I know what I will take from this drawing and I apply to my next one. So yeah, that's why I think it's very important to experiment, kids. Thank you so much for your support this month, guys. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you next time. Bye!